When you understand this, you realize your greatest power, if you're talking about influence or power, is in being feminine. It may not seem like it, but it actually is, because I'm telling you, when men are around a feminine woman, it makes them feel more vulnerable. And not that you're trying to, now you got to be careful because you don't want to manipulate and use people. I've told other women in business, in different, sometimes high-powered jobs, the reaction that men give them is they tease them sometimes because they're feminine, because it makes them feel vulnerable.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about all things that have to do with femininity and building strong relationships. I am Cherry Lynn and I'm here with Dixie, Andelin, Forsyth. Hi Dixie.
Hi Cherry.
So we are here today to talk about our 3 favorite tips for unlearning masculine behavior for women. So yeah. I know we both kind of smile at that. I'm not really sure why. I think it's probably because it's a little bit vague, and I want you to take the time here to explain to our ladies watching what exactly we mean by unlearning this.
You got to remember, please, ladies, do not be hard on yourselves, because we have been taught for at least 100 years and probably more these masculine type behaviors. Some of the obvious is like dress, pushy, aggressive. Not all men are like cads, that are just mean, because there's a lot of real gentlemen out there, but they still tend to be more aggressive when it comes to business. They tend to get what they need or feel they want, either by brute force, such as in the military, using money as a persuasion, or tactics, art of closing the deal, like salesmen do. And all those things are fine in their element, but they don't include relationships. That's the thing that sets them kind of apart, is what you notice all masculine power doesn't really take into account other people or relationships or how they feel. How do you change and become more feminine?
So moving into our 3 steps. Step number 1.
If you want to stop doing a particular behavior, you say, I don't like that, I don't want to do that. How do you stop it? It's much easier to replace something that you don't like with something else than to just quit something.
Right.
For example, I'm always dieting. I don't know about you guys. If I want to lose weight, I found that it isn't enough to just only eat so many calories. It's much easier for me if I, instead of eating for comfort, if I replace it with something else, like looking at clothes or looking at hairstyles, trying something new with my hair. Instead of eating, I do something else. Mm-hmm. And then that habit can stay with you, and it's easier to change than if you just say, I am no longer eating sugar, or I am, no longer doing this. It's much easier if you can replace it. If you are used to yelling, somebody triggers you, and your not natural, but your habit is to yell. I would pre-decide, next time that happens, I am not doing that. Instead, I'm going to, it could be one of several things. Think, I'm about to yell, and say something specific instead. Like my father-in-law used to say, oh, horse feathers. He always said that. And it was actually kind of cute. He said, horse feathers. You can say, I'm not going to yell. I'm going to go into the bathroom and mutter. Instead of just not doing something, you could say, if you're yelling, obviously somebody's offended you, right? Somebody has triggered your emotion. Think of something either kind or even humorous. Say, if this happens, I'm going to think of this right at that point and see what happens. Not all men yell.
Right.
So, but it isn't feminine. It's definitely not feminine, and it doesn't play to your strengths. So let's try not to use it. You could also do something to get, when you have those emotions, you need to get that out, because that's also chemicals going around in your body. So you could go in the other room and do a whole bunch of sit-ups.
This applies to swearing, yelling, like all these things are very similar, because we hear this a lot. We actually just recently had some questions about sarcasm being just bossy, like women feeling this urge to be bossy. I like what you're saying about just taking that energy and trying to do it somewhere more quiet.
It is chemical. It's going through your body. You could take, say, okay, next time I get angry, I'm going to take those 2 pillows over there and I'm going to throw them.
Yeah.
and you can, because you need to get rid of that, but you don't, if you're going to regret yelling at somebody, you need to replace it with something else. Something charming is always better. You'll always be happier about it, and so will the other person if you do something that's more charming. Anytime you do something that is more charming, which I mean is more, it doesn't threaten someone. Your goal is to not threaten someone. You want people to be on your side. You want people to want to work with you because you want to work with them. And the best way is to attract them to you rather than have them put up a wall of defense.
All right, so moving on to number 2.
Your feminine appearance. This is something that is, to me, much easier to do than something that's a little more challenging, like if you have emotional outbursts and things like that. You can make sure you dress feminine every day, and that doesn't mean you're wearing a long ball gown or anything like that. Sometimes it's something as simple as making sure you feel pretty. And what makes me feel pretty may be slightly different than what makes you feel pretty. I don't feel pretty in sweats. I never do, never have. But things that are clean and well repaired and attractive colors. Do something with your hair. Don't just throw on a ball cap and say that's good. Remember, ladies, makeup was designed to make us look better and feel better. So even if it's just a little lip gloss and a little concealer, something. If you don't know and you're not good at makeup, there's tons of tutorials. But don't wear pizza clothes, and we've had videos on that. You don't need to wear pizza clothes. I don't own pizza clothes, and you don't really need to either. Because when you look good, do an experiment. When you feel like you look good, you feel better.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. That seems so simple, but it's very easy to start with. If you're struggling with, being raised maybe in a house where you didn't naturally dress that way or wear makeup or whatever it is something that you can do in just tiny little doses. And like you said, I love that you're explaining that doing that does make you feel more feminine. It automatically changes the way you do things. I don't know about you, but when I'm wearing a dress or when I'm wearing high heels, I act different.
You feel more feminine when you wear those things. I don't wear real high heels often because they kill me, but I love the way I feel when I'm in them, even if it's for an hour. And so if you're playing sports and you want to be more feminine, think about tip number 1, attitudes and stopping a particular behavior by replacing it with something else.
Yeah, and I think too, when you're talking about sports, you don't have to just think about playing sports like, oh, I have to put on makeup. I think a lot of people kind of automatically go there. It might have a lot to do with your body language as you're playing sports. And I'm not saying that you should let go of your competitiveness, because of course you want to be a good player. A lot of girls, that's why they do sports, is because they want to be a good player. But is it about, the body language and what you were talking about earlier with the aggression, the sarcasm? Is she swearing?
And yelling or ordering.
Yeah.
Unless your job in the game is to say, go here and do this.
We ready for number 3?
Mm-hmm. Use one of your feminine power bases. Now, we've talked about several of these before. It's in my book, Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, on feminine power. Use one, and I'm going to suggest this time sensitivity to help counteract if you happen to have masculine tendencies like being pushy or demanding. Because sensitivity means you are more aware, deliberately more aware of other people, how they feel, how they might be feeling, and the impact that what you say or do might have on them. Mm-hmm. And that's something that women have naturally, especially if we kind of focus on it. We have a great advantage there. It's the reason we make good mothers. It's the reason that we make great wives, is because of sensitivity. And some of us have not been encouraged to kind of develop that.
What does that look like? What's the example of that?
Instead of thinking of, I want this and my goal is to get that, who am I talking to? How might they feel? How might this impact them? How do my words affect them? And also, if I need so-and-so to do this, is it more effective to order them to do that or to kind of show them? The greatest leaders are ones that are good followers. A good example of that is Mother Teresa. She was a woman who served the poorest of the poor that were people that were not even of her religion. And she, to serve them, she lived with them. She got right down and she held sick people who were dying, who didn't smell good and were dirty. And she tenderly fed them and loved them. And what happened is, even though she's been gone over 20 years, her order still survives. She was an example to so many people to follow, that the example that she gave of serving people, that she got nothing out of them, absolutely nothing. Not money. And in the beginning, she didn't even get respect. They were suspicious of her. They thought, you're just trying to convert me to Catholicism. And she wasn't. She just was serving them. But what happened is she ended up speaking before presidents and kings. And she said she only did it so that she'd have an audience. She didn't do it for any kind of fame or power or glory, but her feminine power, and she was just a little tiny lady. She wasn't even big at all. And she has influenced millions of people. And you may not be world famous, but you can be famous in your own family and with your friends.
Yes, I think that in your book, I was especially touched at the chapter where it listed so many women that had strong leadership positions in history. There was tons. There's a whole list in the book, and it talks about these women and the impact that they made, whatever it was. And they were all different. They weren't all, saints like Mother Teresa. They were all very different in their own way. But the point is that they were all strong, and they did it in a feminine way, and they stayed true to all these things you're speaking to. They didn't have to resort to brute force and aggression and being sarcastic, putting men down. They didn't have to do that to be strong. And in fact, they actually went the opposite direction to be strong.
It actually makes you weaker doing that. It just seems like it's stronger. But what they did, if you'll notice, every one of them did not do it for money or power. They did it to make civilization better and stronger. And the sensitivity is that they cared about people.
Now that we've covered the 3 steps, I have a couple questions from ladies in our group. What would you say to those women that feel like they have to switch from being masculine at work and feminine at home, and they're struggling with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you understand this, you realize your greatest power, if you're talking about influence of power, is in being feminine. It may not seem like it, but it actually is, because I'm telling you, when men are around a feminine woman, it makes them feel more vulnerable. And not that you're trying to, now you got to be careful because you don't want to manipulate and use people. I've told other women in business, in different, sometimes high-powered jobs, that sometimes they get the reaction that men give them is they tease them sometimes because they're feminine, because it makes them feel vulnerable. It makes them feel like they're kind of at a disadvantage. If you're a good person, you can use that to your benefit without being a manipulative person who's just trying to use people.
Yes. And anyone out there that has ever known someone at work in a leadership position, preferably, just because I think that's more like kind of what we're talking about. But I know for me, I've known women in very high positions in places I've worked, offices I've worked, that are feminine and use it like you're speaking to. And then the other side of it that aren't feminine and are basically going to work every day battling themselves in a sense, or battling the men around them in a sense. And I've never seen it work. I've never seen it successful. I've only seen the women that do come to work and they do practice feminine power. And I'm not talking about coming to work in stilettos and red lipstick. I'm talking about women that carry themselves a certain way, like what we're talking about. Those are always the more valuable women at work. at least from what I've seen. Those are always the women that are admired more, that have more friendships in the workplace. So I have a question here that says, how to not be uncomfortable about standing out by being feminine in a masculine world?
All of us, especially, I'm older than most of you, and I've learned in my life that I go through changes, and they're not, most of them hopefully are changes that I wanted to make. What is the real you? What is the real you? The combination of your behaviors, your attitudes. I can decide that I want to be fit and in shape, and I can go to the gym and I can work out and I can become fit. It isn't natural, but I do it because I want to be fit. I want to feel more energy and feel better about myself. You're either born male or female. If you're a woman, you might say it's not natural for me. Well, consider that there's been over 100 years of a great effort made to invalidate femininity in our world. And it's natural that you feel the way you do. But you are a woman, you are female, and you have a female brain. And this is the source of your greatest strength and your greatest power. If you try it, you can, and you become this, you will start to feel it. So what we are, you and I, is kind of, even at my age, is kind of fluid. I can become what I at my age, I'm not going to become a ballet dancer. I've passed that stage. But there's many things I can become that are positive. I can become more patient. I can decide to get up at 6 a.m. every day and do it if I choose to, even though it's not natural. I don't like getting up at 6 a.m. I can do it. When you think of yourself as sort of a fluid concept, like it doesn't seem natural, but some women, I've known a lot of women who were raised maybe an only girl or an only child, and they felt like in order to get the attention and love from their brothers or their father, they act more like boys. They don't even think about why they're doing this. And so it feels like normal and natural for them, but you'll never be that. And so when you understand these principles and you start understanding them and learning and practicing, you'll see how wonderful it feels.
Well, I like what you're saying about change being healthy. And those feelings of not feeling natural is what a lot of these ladies are saying. That's just feelings of change, and that's good. I think what we're trying to say is please give it more time, because it's normal to feel that way, and
Normal.
it's going to feel that way for a while. As you said, the same as with, changing any kind of lifestyle change, like whether it be dieting or working out. Yeah, it's going to feel weird at first. It's going to feel different. It's going to feel unnatural. But
well, and there's another thing. I when I was young, I was always had dark hair. I started getting gray hair, and I thought, I'm not doing the gray thing. So I went blonde. When I first had blonde hair, it felt like everybody was staring at me. I don't think they were, but it felt that way. And now I don't even think about it because I've been blonde for years. It's sort of like that. Probably not as many people are staring at you as you think.
Well, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for all of your very valuable advice. And I know that there are so many more questions out there. So definitely, if you're watching and you have any, feel free to drop that down below. And I'll also include a link to purchase Dixie's book, Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, if you want to learn more. And we are here every week. So don't forget to check back with us next week, and we will see you next time. Bye.
See you next time.